Fuck it.
Fuck it. Fuck it.
Hey, mama. If you are a mom and are tired of the wash, rinse, repeat burnout cycle of motherhood, this podcast is for you. If you feel lonely and isolated in your motherhood journey, this podcast is for you. If you feel like you have completely lost your identity since your babies were born, this podcast is for you. If you feel like every other mom has it together except for you, this podcast is for you. My name is Amanda, and I'm a life coach dedicated to teaching every mom the tools she needs to liberate herself off the back burner. I am living proof that a woman can be present and loving to her kids while also being a whole-ass person outside of being that kid's mom. The secret? Learning when to say fuck it. Hey guys, welcome to another week of Fuck It Mothering. Thank you so much for being here. I am just always so grateful for you. I'm grateful for your continued support, and I'm grateful for your presence here and your love and your energy. And just thank you so much, because your time is precious. Your time is valuable. And the fact that you're choosing to spend it with me really means a lot, like truly deeply from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I have another really awesome guest for you guys today. Her name is Anna. I don't remember how she pronounced it. That's horrible. Let's go with Anna Howerton. She is a divorce coach. So we had a really, really juicy conversation about divorce and like the contemplation phase of when you're contemplating whether to get a divorce, and how you really like the specific support that you need during that phase, and helping your kids make the transition into, going from a one house family to a two house family, and dating afterwards. And she has like a really fun and interesting like perspective and ideology around like the different feminine energies. Like there's 3 main archetypes that she works with, that you need to like learn how to embody again after being a mom and just being thrust in like that mother energy. I'm not going to give it away right now, but it's fascinating. She's such a great guest. I love this conversation so much because it's so important to talk about it. Because the fact of the matter is that somewhere in the ballpark of 50% of us end up getting divorced. And up until this generation, really, it's been very hush hush. It's been very taboo. It's been something to avoid. And I'm very proud of this generation that I'm a part of that's normalizing it, because marriage is different than what it used to be. Historically speaking, it was a business transaction. And historically speaking, people lived a lot shorter lives. They weren't living to be 80, 90 years old. And I just choose to believe that the fact that the divorce rate is 50% just means that for 50% of us, for half of us, one partnership for our entire lives just doesn't work for us. And that's okay. You can look at your marriage as just a season in your life, a chapter that is completed, instead of it being some huge point of failure in your life. So I'm excited for you guys to dive into this conversation. Please let me know what you think about it in the Apple review section. That did not come out right. Please let me know what you guys think about it in the review section of Apple Podcasts or the Q&A section of Spotify. Those 2 things, like those 2 specific parts of those platforms, help so much with the algorithm. And I just thank you so much to the people who have taken the time to do it, because it helps. It helps this show grow. It helps it to reach more women who need this weekly encouragement. So thank you so much. And also, I hope you guys join me and my Fuck It Friday buddies for our Mom Summer Camp. So if you haven't heard about Mom Summer Camp yet, it is a virtual blanket fort where we're going to hide from our kids. Because summer brings a particular stress for moms, moms who have kids who are in school. But that does not mean that if you're a homeschooling family, that this program isn't for you, because you guys experience, or like if you don't have school age kids yet, if you have like toddlers or preschoolers, because you guys are in the thick of it all the time. You're in the thick of the stress that us with school age kids only experience for 3 months out of the year. It is 100% a place for moms for the summer, because you know what? We go out of our way to plan activities, fun activities and stuff to keep the kids busy and entertained, but we don't plan anything for ourselves. We plan something for you guys. We have activities, we have monthly challenges, but also if that's not your jam, that's totally fine. It's not like a requirement to do all of the things. We have different things available for you to pick and choose what you want to do. You can be as involved or as not involved as you want to be, but it's an opportunity for you to have community with other moms. It's an opportunity for you to learn strategies to manage your stress from 3 awesome mom coaches, if I do say so myself. And it's also an opportunity to learn how to prioritize yourself. That's what our weekly challenges are for. They're there to help you guys learn how to prioritize yourself in your everyday life. So that way you don't get to the point of burnout and complete overwhelm. So I'm going to put the link to sign up for that in the show notes of this. We're running it through August 9th. So whenever you hear this message between now and August 9th is the perfect time for you to join us. Even if we just have 1 week left, come and join us for the last week. Why the fuck not? You have nothing to lose. It's completely free. It's a free program. Nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I'll see you guys there. Well, welcome to another episode of Fuck It Mothering. I'm your host, Amanda Haro, and I have another fabulous guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi there. I'm Anna Howerton. Thanks so much, Amanda, for having me. I am a divorce coach based in Raleigh, North Carolina, spending some time in Orange County, California. I've recently started this coaching business to help people who are going through the different phases related to divorce. Sometimes that's pre and the contemplation phase, deciding whether or not to stay or go, the actual transition, going through the divorce, and then the 3 phases post that many people deal with either co-parenting, dating after divorce, and possibly transitioning back into the workforce if that's something that is, relevant and applicant to a divorce situation. So I'm really excited to talk about my work and then engage in the conversation. I'm a mom. I have a 11-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter, and, co-parent nicely with their dad, who is about a mile away in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's so awesome. I'm so excited to have this conversation because divorce is still like kind of taboo. I feel like it's getting better. I don't know. What's your experience? I feel like that there's a shift happening where it's not so like automatically like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think it's regional and sub-regional on where it's gotten better. And
that makes sense.
Unfortunately, we're somewhat progressive in this area I'm in North Carolina because we have a lot of universities here. It's called the Triangle. So there's Duke, UNC, NC State. It's a bit more progressive here, but I'm still squarely in the, Bible Belt, Southern, Southeast region. It's much more frowned upon, and the percentage is less just because it is more about religion and appearances and things like that. Whereas I'm actually engaged, and my fiance lives in Orange County, California. He tells me that the rate is 70% there. So I think in places like California that are always on the cutting edge, I think it's very accepted there, and there's not as much shame and sadness and, oh no, like that's awful. There's not as much that sentiment or spirit there. But I think in a lot of other places in the country, there is a lot of shame and disappointment, and even just in the ways people respond to you and say, I'm so sorry. And you're kind of like, why are you sorry? This is fine. Or I'm not sorry. Yeah, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry if you're sorry. I'm feeling pretty good about it. But,
right. Yes. Yeah. And just to have that conversation where it's like, it's sometimes it is like a sad event for some people, but sometimes it's not. And I remember when I was going through and like changing my name on all of the things again, opening my own bank account, the woman who helped me at the bank, when I was telling her like, okay, I'm going through a divorce. So I need my own bank account. And she was just like, oh, congratulations. And then she quickly caught herself. She's like, I don't know, if it's like a good thing for you, but like, I don't know. It was for me. And so just wanted to offer that to you if it resonates. And I was like, thank you. You're the first one to congratulate me.
That's amazing. I started saying, Amanda, when I would learn of someone separated or divorcing, I would say, I'm happy if you're happy and I'm sad if you're sad, just to try to like have a connection and relate and understand where they were, and then take a temperature check on if they're happy or sad. And then I was willing to be in whatever emotion they were feeling.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like that's like probably the best way to handle it, because you never really know what someone is going through, what their experience is, how they actually feel about what's going on. But yeah, for me, it was the best. It was the biggest act of self-love that I had ever like bestowed upon myself at that point in my life. There were parts of it that were hard, obviously. And learning to be without my kids was the hardest part. That still is probably the hardest part, I think, but also it's interesting because it was the first time that I'd ever had like a proper break. Like the first time that they were like with their dad for a whole weekend. It's just like, holy shit. Like I have never had anything like this before.
Yes. Yeah. I think I can't remember what the titles are because it was too late for me, but I know there are a couple interesting, maybe even they've gotten to be New York Times bestselling books where women write about how it is absolutely critical to do everything you can to maintain the marriage and relationship when the babies are little and the toddlers. And it's just so draining for whoever the primary parent is, and just how, especially men for women, really needing to meet them in that season and be as present, as helpful as possible. Because I think for a lot of people, babies and toddlers put your relationship in such a pressure cooker that if it is not rock solid, and or probably more if the man really doesn't know how to show up for the woman and not let her lose herself in the motherhood, there start to be cracks and fissures that I think are unrepairable sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Like the analogy you gave of it putting the couple in a pressure cooker was like very adequate. Like that was spot on. Because it's a very hard time for the primary caregiver, and usually the primary caregiver is women. And, not to put all of the blame on men, like women also need to be better about like speaking up for themselves and communicating their desires and their needs, like what they need from their partner, how they need their partner to show up. But also we don't live in a society that raises us to do that. We live in a society that still teaches women to be people pleasers.
Yeah. And I mean, in my marriage, I actually did when it was happening, and my husband at the time just worked crazy hours. He worked all the time. And I said, hey, from 5 to 7, the witching hours, like I need your help with dinner, bath, bed. I had a toddler and a baby, and he's essentially like, hire someone. And I was like, I don't want to do this next to like a 20-year-old. I want to do this shoulder to shoulder with my husband, like in the trenches with me. And I don't want to hire someone to be with me for those 2 hours a day, because it can be such a connecting experience. And unfortunately for me, I felt like I did kind of raise my hand and said, hey, I'm drowning. I need help. And he was kind of like, why don't you just hire someone? And I was like, that's not what I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah, I know. And there were definitely times when I got to my breaking point and was asking for help. And like the very last time I did, the response I got was, well, I'm already doing as much as I can do. And if it's not good enough, then I don't know what to tell you. And in that moment, I was like, okay, we're going to get through Christmas and then I'm filing for divorce.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard. It is such a challenging season for both parents when the kids are little, and it's just so demanding on both that, I mean, it takes a real effort and intention on both sides to not let the relationship just totally fall apart, because I think both people feel like their tanks aren't full in so many ways. And if one or the other isn't good about doing anything to put something in the other person's tank, then you just, one day you're kind of like, okay, cool. Like if you're saying, hey, tough shit, like life is hard, I'm hard, my life's hard because I'm working all the time, and your life's hard because you're taking the kids, like, sorry, tough, like that's what it is. And it's just that's not how you move forward in a relationship or like keep it alive, right?
It's just not a partnership, that's
right.
not what it looks like. And then it's just draining. And it's like, okay, well, I'm already doing it on my own. So I'm just going to do it on my own and cut this weight that's emotionally draining me every single day.
Yes. Yeah. I'll never forget. I actually think I wish I knew the name. One of the authors of this book that I talked about, that she wrote about how, you got to be careful to protect your marriage when the kids are little and you're in that season. And I was listening to her on a podcast and she said, yeah, it was awesome. I'm very lucky. My partner's great. Like sometimes he would look over at me and just see a look on my face and I'd be like holding a baby and a toddler's running around and he would just look at me and be like, oh my gosh, what do you need? Let me take the baby. You leave the house, go get a coffee, go to Target, whatever, And I just thought to myself, hearing her say that never happened to me.
That was not my experience either.
No one ever looked at me and said, oh my gosh, Anna, you look stressed. Like, what can I do to help?
Right. Yeah. No, not my experience at all.
Like, who is that husband? I want that husband.
Right. How do we clone that man's genes? Give every American man like a booster shot of empathy.
Yeah, I mean, the sensitivity and awareness of that guy to like be so dialed into her and be like in touch with her energy level, that he could check in with her in that way was just very moving, I thought.
Yes. Yeah, that is very moving. And I'm glad that she had that. And I'm glad that, there are other women and other couples that have that connection with each other. That's beautiful and wonderful. Definitely wasn't my experience. So getting myself out of that situation was the best thing for me. And because it was the best thing for me, it was subsequently also the best thing for my girls. And like I have 4 girls and I was very like acutely aware of the messages that I was sending them by staying in that marriage and showing them through my actions, like, this is okay. This is what a marriage is supposed to look like. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that was for sure, Amanda. One of my driving reasons to leave is that I really came to a place of knowing that I was no longer in love. And as cheesy and romantic as that might sound, I really loved their dad, but I was no longer in love. And I just thought Tim and I were good enough friends that we could have been your classic couple that made it to college, the kids going to college, and then we could have parted ways. We could have done that. There was no toxicity. It wasn't awful, right?
Yeah.
Like we were friends. We were college sweethearts. We started dating when we were 19, right? Our whole worlds were together. But I thought, I want my kids to see their mom and dad in love and flirting and silly and playful. And you can't fake that. You just can't. So kids who grow up in homes where the parents aren't in love, which is a lot of people, by the way, they know that. They know that. They pick up on it. It's energy. Like they can see that, when if the dad doesn't nicely touch the mom small of the back as he's opening the door, or just little things that they can see other couples do, whether in real life or on movies or TV. They notice that their parents aren't affectionate and they don't talk to each other with kindness and love in their voice. And so I really also was adamant of, I want my kids to see something really exciting in terms of relationship and love that they can aspire to when they're older.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what of the stages that you mentioned that you help people through, like the pre-divorce, the in the thick of it, and then the afterwards, would you say so far that you've seen with your clients is like the hardest one for most people?
Definitely the contemplation, like making
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's interesting. My model, I work with people and say, hey, let's like commit to 6 sessions or 12. Like, here's the pricing. We got to meet together at least that much to get a little bit of clarity or traction and see some results from the coaching. And so somebody that's dating after divorce or starting out co-parenting, it's not crisis. They need help, but maybe they need help every other week or something, or once a month, even dating after divorce, because not enough happens week to week when someone's dating. Right. Potentially they need another full hour check-in with me.
Yeah.
However, when you are in the contemplation phase, that can feel like crisis. And I have had a couple clients that we meet every week for like 12 weeks when they are really like, they have a deadline or something, some big life event is coming. And they're like, I have got to make the call on whether or not to leave or stay before X or Y.
Yeah.
And they're in the most relationally fragile place where they really need help. And that hour a week we spend together, I mean, they never ask to move it. They never ask to reschedule. They are there right on time because they really need it.
Yeah.
So that's the most challenging area that I coach people on, which feels really meaningful to me, because if I'm honest, in all those areas, that's when I would have wanted to coach the most, because when I was going through my own contemplation, I didn't know anyone who was divorced. I mean, going back to speaking of where I live, like, I went to UNC Chapel Hill. I come from a Christian background. My dad is a minister.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like no divorce in my family practically. My parents are super Christian. So I had zero support from them. And then none of my friends were divorced. Like I got married a bit young and then had kids a bit young. And it was the first major life thing that I didn't have anyone to ask who had gone before. I didn't even know who to ask, like what divorce attorney to use. I asked my real estate agent. And so I'm finding a lot of meaning now in helping people through thinking through and really teasing out if separation or divorce is the right path. And it's not always the right path. So please let me say that loud and clear. Divorce is not awesome. It should be the last resort option. And there's a lot of things and exercises I have my clients go through first before we get to the point of saying like, no. And I kind of go through different pillars of relationship that I think are important, that, okay, if you've got these 5 and we're missing these 3, 5 is a lot to work with. 5 out of 8 is a lot to work with. So like, we're going to really dig in on those 3 areas that are frustrating you or annoying you or making you want to pull away from your spouse, and see if we can make some progress there, because there's a lot of good. However, when I have clients in the contemplation phase, they're like, I'm sorry, I cannot sleep with him again. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I want to honor and respect you saying that. It sounds like you don't even want me to offer some thoughts or ideas. And so if you feel adamant and you can't, and by the way, you haven't for 5 years, then we're at an impasse. Like we're on the path to separation, because that's a pretty big piece of a marriage. And so sometimes it's very clear cut if people are that set on their position of not wanting to be physically intimate with their partner. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, we're dead in the water at the start. So, but it's a fragile place. So I can't go in guns blazing saying like, okay, we're done here. Let's go ahead and move. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. And then I listen to them because they're still scared. It's so scary. Yeah. You know this, you lived it. Like you get to a point where you think it's the right call, but you still don't know what it's going to be like. There is so much unknown on the other side of making that transition. And so I am there as sort of a cheerleader and a coach with somebody that has a lot of tools and resources, just from my own personal journey and all the things that I dug into when I was researching and making the call. But then I've done a certification program, like an actual breakup and divorce coach certification program, that I can really help people think through the unknowns and try to lessen the fear, and just, if it's at a 10, dial it down to a 3, or get them more into a positive headspace of like, okay, divorce is never ideal. Having 2 homes is never ideal. But if we decide that that's the best thing because of X, Y, and Z, like for instance, you can't sleep with your husband anymore. Okay, fine. Like, here's what we can do to make it the best scenario possible when you make that leap.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, I had a thought. Hang on. I'm going to wait for it to come back to me because yes. But like, contemplation phase for anything, I feel, is always like the worst part of the experience, because it's that, like you were saying, it's that unknown factor. And it just, it's a little bit stupid to draw this parallel, but I hate needles. I hate getting like my blood drawn or IVs put in or anything. Like, I will be head to toe sweat. And I've gotten a lot better with it if I can just because I've learned to just shut off my mind. But if they leave me in the waiting room for too long, like, that's always when it's like the absolute worst experience, because I'm left with my thoughts. I'm left with so much time to think about it. It's best if it's kind of like a bam, 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 like, don't give me too much time to think and like freak myself out. And it's the same thing with any really big thing that leaves you with this huge, like, unknown factor. You're just sitting and spinning out and freaking yourself out. Like, the longer you give yourself to make the decision, it's almost kind of worse because you're just giving your brain more time to keep you, because your brain also just wants to keep you safe, which is where you're at right now, because it might be miserable, but it's comfortable. You know how to do it. You know how to do this misery. And if you take the leap and do something new and go into the unknown, that might be a whole new level of miserable that might actually kill you.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny that you said that, Amanda, because I did a reel this week, a really short clip telling a story of when I was in my contemplation phase. I went to a neighbor's house, a dear friend of mine, and I sat at her kitchen island and I told her everything. And we just sat there and she looked at me when I was done talking and she said, "I'm just worried you'll be less happy." And I said, "Me too. I am also worried that I will be less happy. Like, I'm terrified that if this marriage ends, I will be less happy." Like, no shit. Like, that's exactly what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
And, and there's also, I've been reading some interesting research around the brain and relationships ending. It's, because if you are parabonded, which you are we're social creatures, our brains are social oriented. So essentially, as you start to have these thoughts swirl about pulling away and leaving a primary partnership, which maybe is literally your abode, your safe home or whatever, and you're thinking about leaving that safe home, your brain is kind of fighting that, like actually fighting that.
100%. Yeah. You've
Because you're
got like
in
neural
safety
pathways in your brain for this person. And that's why it feels so horrible for a while. And like your brain wants to keep putting you back into that pool. To understand that it's a chemical response and to understand how your brain is wired to like fight against you is such an important piece of the puzzle for people to know and understand. Because I didn't have that understanding when I was making this choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And another interesting thing I think about a lot of times is, have you heard of the book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori
I read
Gottlieb?
that book. Yeah, I love that book.
I love that book so much.
Yeah.
One of the quotes, sort of towards the beginning, she says is that she talks about change and loss. And she said, "I know something that's like less commonly talked about, or that therapists less commonly point to, is that change and loss travel together." And so that is why so many people say they want change, but do nothing because they don't want to lose.
Right. Yeah.
And a friend actually sent me that quote and she sent it as like hell yeah, Anna, you're being brave because you know that this is going to cost you a lot. There is going to be a lot of loss, and there is. Any divorce is a ton of loss, but the change is worth it when it's right.
When it's right for you. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. There has to be a certain ego death with any kind of change you want to make in yourself and your own personal development. It keeps most people from not making any big, meaningful change in their lives because they don't want to have to go through the pain of that.
The other thing I talk to people a lot about too is that, because sometimes the couple of people I have coached on contemplation specifically, who they literally come sometimes every week and they feel badly because they're like, "Oh, I still haven't done anything, or I haven't taken a step, or I didn't do our action plan." I'm like, you don't need to feel guilty. Because I'm pro peace. I'm not pro divorce. So like, don't feel like you've got to push in some direction for me. Like, it doesn't matter to me if you stay married or not. Like, I care about your peace. So if you're going to stay, I need to help you find peace. If you're going to leave, I'm going to help you find peace.
Yes.
But I also tell them, you can rest easy a little bit, because it took me a while to get to the point. I'd be curious how long it took you. It probably took me 18 months of really swirling on it to make a call. And I feel like you do, when it's right, you find the knowing inside of you gets so loud that you can't not hear it. And that when you can get quiet and still, as somebody says, like, your truthiest truth will rise up and tell you that you have to go. And so I know that I got to a point where, yes, I was scared. Yes, I had no idea what was going to happen and what my new life would look like, and if I'd ever find love again. But I got to a point of, it felt worth it to roll the dice and see. Like, I was like, I just have to see, because if there's a chance that I'm going to be happier, that's where we're at. Like, I am at rock bottom. And if there is even a hope that I could be happier than I am right now, I've got to risk it all.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. My contemplation phase was about a year. It took me about a year to fully get there. But once I did, it was done. And that's just a personality trait of mine. Once I make a decision, it's done. Like I'm
Which
not
is great.
I'm
And
not
unusual.
the type of person where I'll make a decision and then flip flop and be like, oh, maybe not. Oh, wait, yes, for sure. No, maybe not. Like, no, I do all of that shit before I actually make the decision. But once it's made, it's done.
That's awesome, Amanda. That's a very strong characteristic for you to have. That's awesome.
Which I did not realize. It's just something it just is in my DNA. It's just who I've always been. So I kind of took it for granted until I started just interacting with other humans and watching how much suffering they were causing themselves, like going back and forth on these decisions. And it's just like, wait, I don't understand why you're doing this to yourself. Just yesterday, you told me you made this choice. Why are we changing again?
That's a gift, Amanda. That's a real gift to have kind of decisive, strong decision-making ability is a real gift. That's unusual.
Yes, I'm learning to receive that. Thank you. I will accept that.
You should.
Yeah, but for me, it was a year, and it was really hard. Like I used to be a very strong Christian, and I still feel like I still have like spiritual ties. I still feel tied to God. I would not call myself a Christian. I don't like putting God in a box anymore, personally. But I was very like deep into the Christian church at that time. And so that was like a really confusing piece for me to reconcile. And I just remember I had this one moment where I was sitting at the kitchen table and I was just sobbing into my journal. And I was like begging God for like, just throw me a bone, please. No, like, so that I know that you're not going to like just cast me into hell for doing this. And I felt God's presence, like sit at the table with me and just like smile at me. And I was just like, oh, you're going to be here no matter what. You don't care what choice I make. Like whether I stay or whether I go, you're going to be here. And that helped me so tremendously because that was like probably the biggest piece of my anguish personally.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What a great story, Amanda. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I had similar. My dad was a minister. We're from a very conservative Presbyterian church. So
when I was talking to my parents and my sister, my mom and my sister were very supportive of me. But my dad had a hard time. And he literally at one point told me, he was just like, I was deep in prayer and I was in the throne of God. And I know that this is a mistake. And I'm like, well, I'm doing it anyways, because I also had I had a conversation with God and it was very different than what you just described.
Yes. Yep. I know. I mean, that's the hardest thing. And that's one of the things I work with people on, Amanda, and coaching them is that I prepared them. You're going to get some zingers. Like I got some serious zingers from my parents on the choice, their opinion, and you have to do so much work to like drown out the noises of everyone else's thoughts and opinions, especially if you're close with your parents or siblings or best friends or whomever, and you really trust them. And I love my parents. We're very close. So it was extremely hard for me to tune out what they were saying because I needed to stand firm in what I knew to be true and like what my truth and my knowing was telling me. And that it was just, like I am the only one who knows. Like you guys don't know what's best for me and my kids. Like whatever God is telling you is not same thing. Like not what he's telling me or whoever's in charge is telling me. So it's a lot to have to really stay grounded and firm in your own truth through this season because you get just so much slung at you.
Yes. Yeah, you can. And for the most part, like I really was very well supported and I'm so grateful for that. But there were a few, mostly my dad, if I'm being totally frank, it's mostly my dad. But just at the beginning and then once like I was doing it, like he had my back and it was,
good.
It was just resigned to the fact that Amanda had made up her mind again and it was happening.
That's great.
It would have been so helpful for me at that time, because I didn't know anything about thought work or life coaching or any of these things that I teach women now. And it would have been so helpful for me to know this. So I'm going to say it so that if you, listener, have never heard this before, thoughts are not absolute truth. Your thoughts are not absolute truth. Other people's thoughts are not absolute truth. They're all optional sentences that our brains are offering to us. And so when someone shares words with you, those are just their brain's optional thoughts. That's it. You don't have to take it personally. You don't have to internalize it at all, because it's all just optional shit. And other people's unmanaged brains are not your responsibility.
Yes, 100%. I couldn't agree more. That is so great. Yeah. I mean, that's really it, right? As you get older too, like the more you can discern what's for you and what's not, and leave what's not for you, like leave it and just like, okay, like, thank you, which is, a lot of what you have to do with being a mom, is like when kids are like, I want this, or this is, I don't like this, or, okay,
cool.
I'm sorry, that's how you feel. Like, on to the next thing. We're still going to go run some errands or do whatever, or we're still going to the restaurant I said we're going to. Thank you.
Yes. Speaking of the kids, how was your experience like helping your kids transition from the 2-parent household to the 2 separate households?
Yeah, great question. So we did nesting initially. And this was all happening during COVID too. So we got an apartment. Very fun. And so we got an apartment, and with like the kids stayed, and we rotated in and out of the house for maybe six months.
Okay.
So we didn't do that long, but I would stay for a couple nights when it was mine, and then Tim, and we'd go back and forth. And then eventually Tim rented a house and ended up buying it about a mile down the road. And so I will say, I hesitate to use the word benefit, but a benefit of doing it, of divorce when they're young, is that kids are so open and malleable and like, okay, like this is kind of weird, but whatever. Like, they are so adaptable the younger they are, just like with their brains, and the plasticity and learning the language and all that. And so when we started, I mean, they were 4 and 6. And so I do feel lucky that we didn't have a ton around like having to manage transition. It was just kind of like, oh, I guess we're doing this now. I guess dad lives here. My son in subsequent years, maybe not at the outset, but in subsequent years, he would say things like, I don't like this. I don't like going back and forth. If only we had one house, like I wouldn't always have to like look for my, Nintendo Switch or my one missing sock, or, he did start to call out all the frustrations and the big nuance and pain in the ass it is to go between 2 houses. So my older one, my son, has always been more vocal. And so that's where I've more had to deal with it. That is more the subsequent years of him being like, this sucks, and being like, I know, buddy, I'm so sorry. It is hard. So I just try to do everything I learned and have listened to from parenting books and podcasts, is like acknowledge the feeling and say, yes, like, of course you're frustrated. Of course you are. Like, I don't, and I try to also say too, like, I don't know what it's like. My parents stayed married. So I am sorry that you're having to go between 2 houses, because I don't know what that experience is like, but I can imagine it's very frustrating.
It is. I am a child of divorce, and it sucked. But the thing for me that sucked the most as a kid about the switching and the separation, like I never was a kid who was like, oh, I wish mommy and daddy would just be back together. Like they fought so fucking much that I was like, I want to keep them as far apart as possible. I wish they would just stop fighting. Like that's all I wanted. I was like, I literally don't want you guys in the same house. That would be a train wreck. Can we just like not have to do it at McDonald's because you guys can't stop fighting? Like, can we just try to do that? So, and that piece I did feel guilty about when I was in my contemplation phase about like, perpetuating the cycle and all of this stuff. But I got over that and stop beating myself up about it. I just stopped seeing like divorce as a problem, basically. Like divorce is neutral. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. And it doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be indicative of like, oh, something has gone wrong. Like, no, this is just, my marriage is complete. I don't even really refer to my divorce as a divorce. I talk about it as like my marriage completed. Like I completed my marriage because that season of my life ended. When it began, I overestimated how long it was going to last, how long that chapter of my life was going to last. And then life happened and it's like, oh, this chapter is actually shorter than I thought it was going to be. All right. That's not a problem. On to the next chapter.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And that's exactly how I feel, Amanda. I've said that before. Like, yeah, it's complete. My marriage is complete.
Yeah.
And I recently listened to one of my favorite voices on marriage, love, divorce, romance is this guy in New York City, James Sexton. He's like he calls himself, the nation's leading divorce attorney, and he is brilliant. I adore him. He actually has a book called How to Stay in Love, and it's about how to not end up in his office, giving kind of tips and preventative measures. And he shares really interesting stories. And he was on a recent podcast with the Diary of CEO, Stephen Bartlett. And he said, yeah, we really need to start seeing love and romance and marriages as like chapters in a long book. Like if people are doing a good job on like longevity and health and wanting to live to 80 or 90, that's a really long time. And people obviously didn't used to live that long. And so can we start to see major relationships or marriages as chapters in a long book? And so you had a chapter that ended, I had a chapter that ended. And it's also, it kind of drives me nuts, the season we're in right now, which is, wedding season. So I'm sure you do as well on social media, have so many people like, happy 15th wedding anniversary. I love you so much. And, I'm like, just so you know, like posting a number of years of being together is not a flex. Okay. Right. Like, because if you're not actually happy or like you guys aren't having sex or you don't speak kindly to each other or your kids don't ever see you kiss or anything like that, like, I don't give a rip if you've been together 20 years. It means nothing, Correct. And there's also part of me that instead of people doing their anniversary post, sometimes it's cute, of course, to see people on their wedding day because they're so young and you're happy on their wedding day, hopefully. And
I was pretty stressed on my wedding day. Like that's another thing where it's just like, this is a fucking just myth. Okay. If I ever get married again, I'm not doing a wedding. It was horrible.
Yeah. And I want to I almost want to put a challenge to people in my world to basically say, when you do your anniversary post this summer, like please, instead of posting a picture from your wedding, I want a picture from today of you guys kissing. Like literally take your phone, do a selfie of you guys kissing and put that on social media and say, happy 17 years, baby. Happy 20 years, baby. I love you so much. I love you just as much as when we got married or whatever, like I want to see a real time smooch selfie.
And I would love to see real numbers, like happy, 6,000 kisses. Good night. Happy, however many dates, happy, like numbers that actually matter, because the timestamp, like you said, it's actually pointless. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes. If you're not actually happy and just, putting in the time, that's
right. Right.
Because the very first year we had separated and divorced and I started seeing all the wedding anniversary posts. I was just like, like I started feeling like, oh my God, I threw away. Like we had already gotten to 11 years. Now I'm like starting the clock back. Like, what the hell? Like, who cares?
Right.
Like, why do I care if I have a 50-year marriage versus a 10 versus a 20 versus a 30? Because it's a myth that society has fed us that like, that's a marker of a well-lived life, right?
Yeah.
Like that if you can get that badge, you should be proud of your life. And if not, then like there's something wrong with you.
Right. Marriage used to be like the only thing that women could aspire to be, like a wife and a mother. That's it. So that was like our only badge, but we can go ahead and just throw that in the trash because we have so many other badges that we can pick up now and create for ourselves.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. So the contemplation, and then when I coach people on dating after a divorce, Amanda, you and I talked about this. One of the things I have to really, I coach men and women, but with women, I really have to dig in with them as they're thinking about dating again, when they're ready, about this idea of most women, when we're most are fully alive and kind of online selves, we have three different parts. So there's the maiden, the queen, and the mother. And so I think that when you're in the baby, toddler, nursing or pregnant or bottle feeding and, when they're just little, diaper phase, you're full on, you're almost all mother.
Oh
So,
yeah.
you could make the argument that that's maybe when you are the most uninteresting, to be honest, over the arc of your life, because you're just fully in that one archetype, your one power of mothering.
Yes.
And you basically have to quiet and dim down the maiden and the queen. And so the maiden is the fun loving, silly, flirty, playful energy that, will wink at a guy in a bar and, be like brazen and confident and light and carefree. And I think what happens is, and I'm sure, this is maybe partly why you started this podcast or the work that you're doing, is like so many women just completely, those two other pieces, the maiden and queen, get snuffed out in the mothering hyper phase.
Yep.
And then it's really hard for them to bring those two back online.
Yeah.
And so that's
especially when we still live in a society that tells women that like you're selfish for doing anything for yourself. Like you're selfish if you aren't focused on your kids 100% of the time and your kids don't come first all the time. Like if you prioritize yourself at all, that you're selfish.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. So a lot of the work that I do is helping women tap back in to those other energies and female personas that are inside all of us. They've just lost them, right? They've just lost the ability to flirt and be sexy and fun and
mysterious. Like, you just are so fucking tired. Like you're just actually physically exhausted. You're like, I literally don't have the energy for any of that shit.
Yes. And so for some women, it's not, I obviously don't know your story about, your thoughts or what your journey's been dating after divorce, but yeah, that's why for some women, they're not ready for a long time because they are just still tired. And it's so big. It's a huge tsunami change to all of a sudden be co-parenting in two different houses and new life and figuring out all the new rhythms.
There's like a really important piece of just like being by yourself and learning who you are, tapping into yourself before you try to attach yourself to another person so that you don't just become like codependent on that person to tell you who you are.
Yes, 100%. That's part of the work we do first is self-love.
Yeah.
So I've really got to work with, I hate to say it, women more than men on getting back to self-confidence, self-love. I am worthy. Here's why. I have some journaling scripts and exercises I have my clients go through where it's literally like, write down the top 5 things you love about yourself, like personality traits or, not physical or tangible. And then I have them write, what are your top 5 physical things you like, your nose or your tiny wrists or your ankles or, whatever, like write down the 5 things. And I can't tell you, Amanda, how many women struggle to do that.
Of course. That doesn't surprise me at all because they're not tapped into themselves at all.
I'm like, I had a client this week where I was like, what do you mean? You really can't come up with like 5 things that you like about yourself, like physically. And she was just like, no, I'm so insecure. I hate exercise like this. I hate thinking about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, we've got some work to do, work to do. And you've got to fully value yourself and be in such a high vibrational self-love state before it will ever be right to pull someone back into your sphere. Because as you said, then you're really in danger of a codependent cycle of just like, you have to have a season of who am I when I'm just Anna, when I'm just Amanda, when I'm just Sarah or this person, because you'll just fall into the same bad patterns. Or the other thing I see a lot is you think it's going to be solved by ending up with someone completely different than your ex, but that usually isn't the answer either, because then it's too extreme in this way. It's super attractive initially because you're like, they are totally different from this person. Not the first guy I dated was the exact opposite of my ex. And I was like, I'm in love. This is it, and and no, that was not it. Like it was too much. It was way too far. And the answer, like most things, is usually in the middle.
Yes.
And there were obviously things about your ex that were good that drew you to him initially.
Right.
And so, maybe some of him, but then other things that you really lacked and were missing, you can look for as you're dating after divorce and trying to, navigate those waters. But yes, absolutely. I think it's so important to initially take time to know yourself, be happy on your own, be in love with yourself, be in love with life
Yes.
before you can be in love with another person or start to like want to pull that in. And so, definitely the self-love exercises, and then just, starting to think through like, what do you actually want? And then trying to dial up that queen aspect as well before you go out and date. Cause you got to be in your maiden a bit to be flirty and kind of lure them in to let the guys know that you're not just mom.
Right.
Because they pick up on, if you're all about your kids and mom energy, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not into that. Like,
Right.
most good guys are fine if you have kids and if you're a mom, and some like that, of course, that you are a mom and they think that's beautiful. But if that's all you talk about on the date, if you, your whole world is around that, or I can't do this, I can't do that, I've got to do this for the kids, blah, blah. They pick up on that and they're like, oh, cool. You are way too lopsided on the mom focus and not enough on maiden or queen, which the queen is, the one who's like this kind of siren that's like has big ideas. I'm here on this planet for something else besides procreation. And this is what I want to do with my life, and inspiration, and how you're going to contribute to the world. Like that's the queen, is your queen energy of your work and your power and your purpose. And so if men can see some power and purpose and inspiration, that's super attractive. And then if they also, have a bit of the maiden where you're like fun and down for adventure and a bit like carefree. Cause that's the other thing, when you become a mom, there's such a loss of spontaneity and carefreeness because you've got bedtime or nap time or a feeding schedule or this or that. Like the loss of, and that's like really crushed me. It was just the loss of spontaneity. I love adventure. I love travel. I love being mobile. Like being housebound is like my worst nightmare. And that's a given when you're a mom, when they're little.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I had my first when I was 22. So I didn't.
Wow.
Yes. I didn't give myself a chance to like just be young and stupid and figure out who I was. Married at 21, first one was popping out at 22, and then they came every 2 years, until I stopped. So, I completed my marriage. I did jump into a relationship like immediately afterwards. And that was like a 3-year relationship. And when that ended, that was like very traumatic for me. I had other things going on in my life. So it was kind of like grief and tragedy coming at me in all areas. But this time that I've spent by myself, what year is it? It's 2024. So I've been single for over 2 years now. It's been the best because like once I healed from that other relationship ending, I've realized I was like, wait, I've never really been by myself because I started dating their dad when I was 19. So I had never been an adult by myself. And so I realized like what a gift this new season at the time that I was heading into, which is the chapter that I'm in right now, of like just being Amanda and figuring out what I like to do, what my hobbies are, what I want to do at the end of the night to decompress instead of doing what he wants to do at the night to decompress. And I love it so much that I'm having a hard time like thinking about giving it up. I'm like, I don't think I want anybody. And then sometimes I do. So right now I'm in a contemplation phase of just like my dating life going forward. I did date for like 2 months and then I shut it down because I was like, this isn't worth it. I'm enough on my own. Like all these other people are exhausting me.
Good for you, Amanda. Yeah. So like, I mean, that's the thing is that I think also too, I'm a big believer that when you're not looking for it is when the universe will bring it. So if you're kind of like, I'm living my life, like I love myself, I love life, like if love is supposed to come my way, it will like land on my doorstep. It'll be easy. I'm not going to search it out. I'm not going to have needy energy. I'm not going to feel like I have to have this to be happy. I mean, I think somebody will come your way where it will feel easy and you'll be like, oh, okay.
That would be so nice. That would be such a lovely gift from the universe. If it was just easy.
Yeah. But I will say, I was actually, just before we started talking, I was listening to a podcast with Patty Stanger. You know, she's like the millionaire matchmaker. She
Mm-mm.
was on a podcast with Lauren and Michael Bostic. They're like Skinny Confidential, him and her. And she was talking about how COVID really messed things up for dating because people did get so alone to being or so used to being alone. Like now there are a lot more people like you, Amanda, who are like, I don't know, being alone is pretty great. Like,
Right.
I don't really.
Actually, the idea of bringing, especially a man, into my house and like having to deal with like the eccentricities and the cabinets that are left open and just like you being in my space, I just don't know that that's necessarily attractive to me.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what she was speaking to, that energy of people being like, I'm kind of good. Like, I don't know. Like, But there are all these cool arrangements though now, Amanda, where like people get married and like stay in their own houses or, you know.
I find that so fascinating. Because like for me personally, another thing that actually like deters me from dating, I don't want anyone else's help raising my kids. Like the idea of another person coming in as like a parenting figure to my girls, I'm like, you can fuck off. We've got a good thing going. Like, I'm fine. I want someone for me, not for like the kids are a bonus to this person. And then that person would be a bonus to the kids in my mind. Yeah. And so like this idea of couples who are very happy just in their own residences, you know, I'm like, I like that idea. That good for you for being brave and just doing your own thing.
Yeah, I know. It's super interesting. I mean, it's a very fascinating model. I'm different than you, Amanda. I love the help. I mean, like Mark, my fiance, he takes the kids to school. He helps unload the dishes. Like for me, having an extra set of hands is like everything. Like somebody else to like help, you know, tell a bedtime story or, you know, tie somebody's shoes or do the laundry or what. I mean, just a little bit of help. I'm like, I am opposite. I'm like, come in my space. If you are a able-bodied grown-up who is going to be helpful in my life, you are welcome in this home. Like,
see, like my plan is to build this $1 million business and then just hire a housekeeper, hire a personal assistant to help me with like the nitty gritty things that like, my house is a dumpster fire on a regular basis because I'm one person and I have 4 children. Like it looks like I have 4 children. So it would be very nice to hire somebody to come and just clean my house, tidy things up.
Yeah. Yes, that would be amazing.
Yes.
You must have, I think I have like right now, I can see like 10 pairs of shoes in front of the door. You probably have like 20.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. And just the socks. I'm so happy to be in summer. So that way we don't have to do socks all the time because I'm done with them. They're everywhere. They never match and they all smell.
Yes. I did a load of laundry earlier today and my daughter had a bunch of moss. They were all over like 2 or 3 pairs. She must have run around outside in the backyard where we have moss with and I just was like, I'm throwing these away.
I would 100% throw those away. Yeah. And when my basket, I'm not
gonna pull the things off and like try and
my 7-year-old had like gotten almost a full body full of burrs. And I started picking them off and I was like, on second thought, just strip down. We're throwing this entire outfit in the trash. And just go put new clothes on. I'm not doing this.
That is hilarious. Yes. That's, I mean, little like mom hack is what is not worth the mental energy and just pitch it, you know?
Yeah. The $7 leggings that she was wearing from Target, not worth it. Yeah. I will fucking go to Target.
Jack, we can get another pair of Cat and Jack.
Yeah. Exactly. Awesome. So I like to end, and I have to open it because I'm a bad host and didn't do it. I like to end each episode with a round of lightning questions. Okay. Ready?
Ready.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
A mom.
Really?
I know.
That's beautiful.
I know, but it doesn't match my actual personality. It's just what I was like brainwashed to believe. I'm glad I am a mom.
I love how honest you are. I absolutely love how honest you are.
But I'm not actually that maternal, and I could not have one more child than 2 because it would do me in. So, like, bravo to you having 4. 2 nearly kills me. So.
What is your favorite kid-free dinner? So, if no picky eaters are allowed to bitch, moan, and complain, what are we eating?
Grilled shrimp, kale salad, and Frozen yogurt.
Nice. Nice. What is your favorite book?
That is a good question. It might be Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Like if I had to do one favorite, it might be that one.
It was really good.
Yeah, I love that book.
It's very good. What is your guilty pleasure entertainment?
Oh, that's a good. Kardashians. I don't watch any. I am not a bachelor or a bachelorette. I watch no Real Housewives. I don't watch Bravo. There's so many that are very mainstream and that I feel abnormal that I'm not into them. The literal only reality show that I'm into is the Kardashians.
I laugh because the last interview that I did, she said the same thing. She was like, Kardashians.
I don't get why they have such haters. Like I am upset. I'm fascinated by them. I'm endlessly fascinated by their success. They all work so hard, like, I mean, I know they have teams, of course, but they work hard too. And I mean, I have one friend that is like this close to disowning me because of my, like, my, obsession with them or obsession is wrong, but the way I'm pretty like, big fan. She's like, I don't know if this is going to work for me, Anna.
That's so funny. This question I stole from the Low Life podcast, but if your belly button was an actual button, what would it do?
Sparkle.
Sparkle? Like the button would sparkle, or it would create sparkles?
It would create sparkles, like shoot out sparkles.
I love that.
I think that would be fun. Like a sparkler stick wand, sparklers.
Yes. Nice. I like that. So that way, if you ever were bored, you could just do that. Or if you wanted to enter somewhere with a bang, like have a really great party entrance.
Sparkle. Yes. And I just think like, it's just like also that's also the energy. Like that's what I want to be in the world is like a sparkle, fun, bright energy that, would be a good conversation starter, light something up, maybe light something on fire. Who knows,
I love that. And finally, what's one thing in motherhood that you'd like to say fuck it to?
Oh man, how long do we have? Not enough time.
You're like, just one?
I think this overall idea that we've got to coddle them and provide these top-notch experiences so that they are as comfortable as possible and that we have to shield them from hurt or pain or a tough experience. For example, I mean, I actually was feeling a little guilty this morning. This morning I came back, I did a hot yoga class and I'm like dripping wet because it's hot here. And then I did hot yoga and I needed to eat breakfast and hop in the shower. So I'd asked my fiance, Mark, to take the kids to school. And my daughter was like, Mommy, it's my last day of third grade. Like, don't you want to take me? Or Mark came out and said, hey, Emmeline wants you to take her. And I was like, why? Did something happen? Is she okay? Is she hurt? And he was like, no. And she was like, it's my last day of school, Mommy. And I'm doing her birthday sleepover tonight. We just got a lot going on. And so I just had to say, like, I'm so sorry, sweetie. Like, that's really kind that you want me to do it. But like, I need Mark to do it because I got to get in the shower. I'm sopping wet. Do you see me?
Yeah.
I'm dripping in sweat. I've got to get in the shower. And like her face was so like despondent and sad. And so I debated that moment, like, do I just give up and say, okay, fine, I'll drive you. I'm soaking wet, whatever. I'll put a towel in the car. I'll go. I'm hungry, whatever. Haven't had my coffee. But in that moment, I just was like, no, like, I'm sorry. I'm sad if this is really going to hurt her. But like, at some point, I also have to show the kids, like, they're not in charge. Like, I also have a life that I'm trying to live and provide for them. And I also have to protect my own mental health and wellness. And then I don't want to resent the fact that I'm driving to school in sopping wet clothes, sweaty and smelling. And so I would want to say, fuck it too. Just this idea that we've got to coddle them in a way so that they don't ever feel anything bad or they don't have a bad emotion or they're not, disappointed or hurt. And like, maybe I really did hurt my daughter this morning and I'm sorry for that. And I guess I might apologize later, but I'm not going to apologize for saying like, I got to start my day too. Like,
yeah, no, exactly. And it's totally fine to have boundaries with your kids, and it sounds like you said that you're having like her birthday sleepover tonight. Like she's got things going on and you're totally going to be there for those things, but you can't be there for all of the things. And it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay for her to learn that. And in learning that, it's going to hurt, but that's not a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find you if they'd like to connect.
Awesome. So I have a website that's just my name, annahowerton.com. And then I'm also fairly active on Instagram, which is just at @AnnaHowerton_. So
Perfect.
either of those places, I post content, things that I'm thinking about consuming, coaching tips, things that are happening with my clients, stories that kind of spark ideas to share that I hope are helpful to people that follow me. And my website's the best place to learn about what I do, who I am. And then there's a contact page if you want to reach out for a free discovery call.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have a great weekend and that you survive the birthday party. Is it a slumber party?
It is.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Who invented
Prayers
slumber parties? I'm sorry. I want to say fuck it to slumber parties. Like, why is this a thing? They don't sleep and then I don't sleep and then the house is a mess.
Yeah.
Why do we do this?
But you do save like $300 to $500 not doing a party at like a jump house or something, I will say that.
I know. But can we just like have the party and then kick everybody else's children out? Like, I want to sleep.
I know. Well, thank you for your prayers and well wishes for my evening.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yes. Oh my God, please.
Are you living your one wild life to the fullest? You're not? Why the fuck not? What are you waiting for? The time to live is now, mama. Do not wait until your youngest is in college. Let your dreams hire me for an hour so I can explain how I can help you achieve any goal in your life. You've put yourself off long enough. It's time to pour into you. The link to schedule your 60-minute complimentary consultation is in my show notes. Join the community of Fuck It Moms by following me on Instagram and Facebook at Fuck It Mothering. That's fuck without the U. So FCK It Mothering. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you never miss your weekly encouragement. And please rate, review, comment, and share. All of these things help with the algorithms, so that way when other overwhelmed moms are looking for encouragement, they can find me. Every month, I give away one of my favorite books and a Starbucks card to a lucky winner. All you have to do to enter is write a review or tag me in social media when you share an episode. See you next Sunday, gorgeous.